everyone. Welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimaloe in Abuja. We're standing by tonight to hear from President Bola Tinubu and a nationwide broadcast on the critical situation in Rivers State. We shall be joining the network service of the NTA, where that broadcast will be released tonight. We're standing by to hear from the president after the president today met with service chiefs and leaders of the National Assembly. Let's now stand by for the national broadcast from President Bola Tinubu.
Fellow Nigerians, I feel greatly disturbed at the tone we have come to regarding the political crisis in Rivers State. Like many of you, I have watched with concern the development, with hope that the parties involved will allow good sense to prevail at the soonest. But all that hope borne out without any solution to the crisis. With the crisis persisting, there's no way democratic governance, which we all fought and worked for over the years, can thrive in a way that will redound to the benefit of the good people of the state. The state has been at a standstill since the crisis started, with the good people of the state not being able to have access to the dividend of democracy. Also, it is public knowledge that the governor of Rivers State, for unjustifiable reasons, demolished the House of Assembly of the state as far back as 13th December 2023, and as up till now, 14 months after, now rebuilt the same. I have made personal interventions between the contending parties for a peaceful resolution of this crisis, but my efforts have been largely ignored by the parties to the crisis. I'm also aware that many well-meaning Nigerians, leaders of thought, and patriotic groups have also intervened at various times with the best of intentions to resolve the matter. But all their efforts were also to no avail. Still, I thank them. On February 28, 2025, the Supreme Court, in a judgment in respect to all about 8 consolidated appeals concerning the political crisis in Rivers State, based on several grave unconstitutional acts and the disregard of the rule of law that has been committed by the governor of Rivers State, as shown by the evidence before it, pronounced in very clear terms. And I quote, "A government cannot be said to exist without one of the 3 arms that make up of the government of a state under the 1999 Constitution as amended. In this case, the head of the executive arm of the government has chosen to collapse the legislature to enable him to govern without the legislature as a despot. As it is, there is no government in Rivers State, and I quote. The above pronouncement came after a catalogue of judicial findings of constitutional breaches against Governor Siminalayi Fubara. Going forward in their judgment, and having found and held that 27 members of the House who had allegedly deflected, and I quote, are still valid members of Rivers State House of Assembly and cannot be prevented from participating in proceedings of that House by the 8th respondent, that is the governor, in cohort with 4 members, and unquote. The Supreme Court then made some orders to restore the state to immediate constitutional democracy. These orders include the immediate passing of an appropriation bill by the Rivers State House of Assembly, which up to now has not been facilitated. Some militants had threatened fire and brimstone against their perceived enemies of the governor, who has up to now not disowned them. Apart from that, both the House and the governor have not been able to work together. Both of them do not realize that they are enough to work together for the peace and good governance of the state. The latest security report made available to me show that between yesterday and today, there have been disturbing incidents of vandalization of pipelines by some militants without governor taking any action to curtail them. I have, of course, given stand order to the security agencies to ensure safety of lives of good people of Rivers State and the oil pipelines. With all this and many more, no good and responsible president will stand by and allow the grave situation to continue without taking remedial steps prescribed by the Constitution to address the situation in the state, which no doubt requires extraordinary measures to restore good governance, peace, order, and security. In these circumstances, having soberly reflected on and evaluated the political situation in Rivers State, and the governor and deputy governor of Rivers State, having failed to make a request to me as president to issue this proclamation as required by Section 305, Paragraph 5 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, it has become inevitably compelling for me to invoke the provision of the Section 305 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, to declare a state of emergency in Rivers State with effect from today, 18th March, year 2025, and I so do. By this declaration, the governor of Rivers State, Mr. Siminalayi Fubara, his deputy, Mrs. Ngozi Odu, and all elected members of the House of Assembly State are hereby suspended for an initial period of 6 months. In the meantime, I hereby nominate Vice Admiral Eboket Ibas, retired, as administrator to take charge of the affairs of the state and the interests of the good people of Rivers State. For the avoidance of doubt, this declaration does not affect the judicial arm of Rivers State, which shall continue to function in accordance with their constitutional mandate. The administrator will not make any new laws. He will, however, be free to formulate regulations and may be found necessary to do his job, but such regulations will need to be considered and approved by the Federal Executive Council and promoted by the President for the state. This declaration has been published in the Federal Gazette, a copy of which has been forwarded to the National Assembly in accordance with the Constitution. It is my fervent hope that this inevitable intervention We help to restore peace and order in Rivers State by awakening all the contenders to the constitutional imperatives, binding on all political players in the Rivers State in particular and Nigeria as a whole. Long live a united, peaceful, secured, and democratic Rivers State in particular, and the Federal Republic of Nigeria as a whole. God bless you all for listening. Thank you.
Breaking news right here. After President Bola Tinubu moments ago have declared a state of emergency in Rivers State for an initial 6 months. The president has declared, based on the provision of Section 305 of the Nigerian Constitution, the president today at the presidential villa says that considering all the political tension in the state and the security concern, has now been moved to declare the state of emergency based on the powers as enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution. In the meantime, the president has said that Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas, retired, will now be the military administrator to take charge of the affairs of the state in the interest of the good people of Rivers State. And these will be for the initial period of 6 months. Breaking news right here. Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas, retired, will serve as administrator to take over the affairs in Rivers State for an initial period of 6 months. And the governor of the state, Mr. Stephen-Laye Fubara, and his deputy, Mrs. Ngozi Odu, are advised to stand aside, as well as other political elected leaders in the state, an exception of the judiciary. The president, in his declaration, also said the administrator will not put in place any new laws in the state, but will put in place some regulation that may be found necessary for him to carry out his job. But such regulations will need to be considered and approved by the Federal Executive Council and promulgated by the president for the state. These extraordinary measures have been taken in view of the tension that has been created in the state. This is breaking news that we're following for you right on Channels Television. But we'll talk more about these in a moment and follow up on what has become a major story in the land. It does look like we saw what could happen today, and so we're prepared. I have a son of the soil who shall be dissecting all this for us, and also the constitutional angle to it. We get the legal perspective on today's. But first, let's start you with some of your political roundup stories.
We are Reactions are trailing the revocation notice on the People's Democratic Party headquarters in Abuja by the FCT administration. In a letter dated March 13, 2025, and addressed to the PDP National Chairman, Umar Damagum, the Director of Land Administration at the FCT administration, Chijioke Nwankweze, hinged the revocation on the non-payment of ground rent by the party. The FCT official alleged that the PDP has refused to pay the annual fee expected of landowners for the right to occupy and use their property in the last 19 years, between January 1st, 2026 and January the 1st, 2025. There are some efforts made towards getting the 2022 Electoral Act amended to reinstate statutory delegates in political party primaries ahead of the 2027 general elections. The Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, made this known while addressing the leadership of the NBA. He also urged the association to rid the legal profession of unqualified practitioners. Senator Akpabio described the omission of statutory delegates from party primaries in the 2022 Electoral Act as a costly mistake that must be corrected before the next round of elections. The Senate has set up an ad hoc committee to be headed by Senator Jimoh Ibrahim to investigate the alleged annexation of the country's mangrove islands and maritime territories by the Republic of Cameroon. The committee is expected to report back with necessary recommendations in the next 2 months. As part of his resolutions, the Senate has urged President Bola Tinubu to make immediate steps to safeguard Nigeria's territorial waters, including securing over 2,560 oil wells identified within the disputed mangrove islands in Akwa Ibom State. The Senate leadership has also committed to engaging directly with President Bola Tinubu to explore diplomatic solutions to the crisis. The Senate has passed through second reading a bill seeking to amend the Nigeria Data Protection Act 2023 to require social media platforms to establish physical offices within the country. The bill, titled A Bill for an Act to Amend the Nigeria Data Protection Act 2023 to mandate the establishment of physical offices within the territorial boundaries of the Federal Republic of Nigeria by social media platforms and for related matters 2025 SB 650, was sponsored by Senator Ned Nwoko of Delta North. Speaking on the bill, Senator Akpabio acknowledged that while having a local address for digital platforms is beneficial, the regulation of bloggers requires careful consideration. The House of Representatives is directing the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing to conduct a comprehensive technical audit of Otedola Bridge within 30 days following the recent accidents on the bridge. The House reached this resolution following a motion of urgent national importance from Honorable Sesi Wengan. The House also resolved that an immediate ban be imposed on the movement of fuel tankers across the Otedola Bridge from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. The Speaker also announced the defections of Usaini Jallo from Kaduna State and Adamu Tanko from Niger State from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress. In Ebonyi State, Governor Francis Nwifuru has suspended 3 commissioners for gross misconduct and dereliction of duties. The governor announced the suspension of the commissioners during the State Executive Council meeting at the Government House in Abakaliki, the state capital. The suspended commissioners are Solomon Azi, Grants and Donor Agencies, Victor Uzomachuku, Environment, and Ikuwa Omebe, Rural Development. Governor Nwifuru suspended the 3 commissioners for 1 month following their absence without any permission during the state ESCO meeting. The coalition of lawyers in Abuja are asking President Tinubu to once again intervene in the ongoing political crisis in the state and save the situation from degenerating further. Speaking at a news conference in Abuja, the lawyers called on parties loyal to the governor and those loyal to the minister of the FCT to tone down on the language they employ whenever they want to defend their position. The lawyers also warn against the dangers of profiling any tribe or ethnic group in the state in the ongoing political feud.
When you begin to use a derogatory remark against them, it can lead to something else. That's the reason why Mr. President should be keeping quiet, because if anything happened to a section of this country, especially the Niger Delta, Nigeria will feel it.
Breaking news right here. Retired Nigerian Navy Vice Admiral Ibokete Elbaz has now been declared as the administrator of Rivers State. Has now been in a situation where President Bola Tinubu has invoked the Constitution provision of Section 305, declaring the state of emergency following the political tension which has led to serious security concern in the state. The president earlier today met with service chiefs, including some leaders of the National Assembly, the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives after a meeting which ended after several meetings behind closed door. There were no briefings after that meeting, but the president declared that considering the situation where parties involved were not able to yield to his counsel, and no government, according to him, based on the evaluation, is in place in Rivers State. So the president has deemed it fair that it will not look on as a responsible president and look on what has become a major political crisis, and therefore has declared retired Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas as the administrator in Rivers State. I'm being joined tonight on the program. Let's get some legal perspectives to it, and of course, get to know what is going on without having to understand what may have happened today. We wanted to discuss this program. So Mr. Tony Cole, the APC governorship candidate in Rivers State in 2023, is our guest also on the program. So it does happen. A few minutes ago, we got a hint that this is going to happen, and the president is going to address the nation on the situation in Rivers State. So tonight, let's give you some perspectives into this. But let me refresh your memory on what exactly the president said about the state of emergency in Rivers State.
It has become inevitably compelling for me to invoke the provision of the Section 305 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, to declare a state of emergency in Rivers State with effect from today, 18th March, year 2025, and I so do. By this declaration, the governor of Rivers State, Mr. Similaye Fubara, his deputy, Mrs. Ngozi Oju, and all elected members of the House of Assembly state are hereby suspended for an initial period of 6 months. In the meantime, I hereby nominate Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas, retired, as administrator to take charge of the affairs of the state and the interests of the good people of Rivers State. For the avoidance of doubt, this declaration does not affect the judicial arm of Rivers State, which shall continue to function in accordance with their constitutional mandate. The administrator will not make any new laws. It will, however, be free to formulate regulations and may be found necessary to do his job, but such regulations will need to be considered and approved by the Federal Executive Council and promoted by the President for the state. This declaration has been published in the Federal Gazette, a copy of which has been forwarded to the National Assembly in accordance with the Constitution. It is my fervent hope that this inevitable intervention will help to restore peace and order in Rivers State by awakening all the contenders to the constitutional imperatives, binding on all political players in the
That's earlier on, portion of what the president said in his nationwide address. So who is the administrator in Rivers State? Who is the man that's going to be in charge for the initial 6 months? Is a retired Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas, who is a former Chief of Naval Staff. The man whose picture you're seeing earlier on your screen, Vice Admiral Ibas, was the Chief of Naval Staff from 2015 to 2021, and he will be serving as the administrator, taking over from Governor Similaye Fubara and his deputy for an initial 6 months. What do we know as of now? Much we are telling you, but legally, what does this mean? What are the situation from the Rivers people point of view? Let me get into the conversation tonight. Liberals Oshoma is a lawyer and will be bringing us up to speed. The last time we had a state of emergency in this country was 3 states in northern Nigeria by former President Goodluck Jonathan. And also now we are hearing from President Bola Tinubu. This is an extraordinary measure. Also on the program, I have joining me from our Lagos studio, Mr. Tony Cole, who was the governorship candidate of the APC in the 2023 election. He's live for us. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Let's get an initial view from you, Mr. Cole. As a Rivers man, how does this come to you? Did you ever see this come, a state of emergency in your Rivers state?
You know, this is a sad day for us as Rivers people, because it's the lowest mark that you can get as a democratic entity that a state of emergency be declared on you. It means three things immediately. It means first, that you are failures as political entities. It means secondly, that you have not respected any kind of democratic regulations or laws for which you have been elected to represent your people. And thirdly, it's a sign, a mark, a vote of no confidence by the federal institution in the ability of Rivers State to solve its problems. This, for me, is a very, very dark day in Rivers politics.
But, I mean, what do you make of the president's decision or the president's move? A political situation that has now is generating. Earlier on, we saw an explosion. Those who are in the investigation are ongoing, but those who are saying that there may not be any direct link with the political tension in the state, but there are drums of war already, militants already speaking, there are agitators, there are those who are aggrieved, who are saying, hell will reign in Rivers State. Do you think that the president was right politically weighing in on this matter? In this matter?
So this is coming, it's coming a bit late in the day. The resolution of the political situation should have been done a long time ago, but that's in the past. What we have today is a situation where tensions had risen. It may or may not be related, but an event happened last weekend at a very, very sacred ground to the Jaws, especially the Calabaris. And I felt that that was very ill-intended, whereby the minister and a lot of people went into Calabari land in Abalama to make some declarations. That was poking the tiger in the eye. It's no coincidence, as far as I'm concerned, that a day later or 2 days later, you begin to see explosions rocking the Niger Delta. A few minutes before coming on air, before this presidential state of emergency, a second explosion happened. My thinking and my thoughts is that the warnings had been coming, saying that if we continue in this direction, then installations will begin to be targeted. So I don't think it's a coincidence. And I suspect that the president did not have much of a choice at this point, but to begin to draw the line and take a hard situation. It's still a disgrace to Rivers State and the people of Rivers State that it has come to this.
Would you consider it, Mr. Cole, that this is hardcore? That this could be, it's so much of a hard tackle on the situation?
It is, but again, you know, it's one of the provisions that the Constitution makes within a democratic setting. But it is something that is kept so far away that it is only evoked when all else has failed. And that, for me, is where the indictment is. Sheung, this is a big indictment on every political actor in Rivers State. We have been saying it over and over and over again, that people had to become mature, sit at the table, stop thinking about personal interests, and begin to consider the people of the state. But nobody cared. They don't care about the people. Everybody was just very, very positioned about self-interest, power grabbing, and this is the result of it. I don't think it's not the end of the resolution. You know, what's going to happen now is that there has to be two sides of this. The military administrator, or the sole administrator, former military admiral, is going to have to sit down and do governance. Now, behind the scenes, there is going to have to be a very cold and hard calculation on the politics. If we cannot resolve the politics in 6 months, then you're going to see a situation where this group of politicians will have to be wiped out and a whole generation of new politicians come into the scene. It's a very serious day for Rivers State.
But take a listen to this, right? The president looks like a helpless man in his statement, politically speaking. This is what the president said. He said, with the crisis persisting, there is no way democratic governance, which we have all fought and worked for over the years, can thrive in a way that will redound to the benefit of the good people of the state. He says, it is public knowledge that the governor of Rivers State that's not the portion I wanted to bring up. He made a mention of how he had persuaded both parties, but they have ignored him according to... So now this is the portion. He said, I've made personal interventions between the contending parties for a peaceful resolution of the crisis, but my efforts have been largely ignored by the parties to the crisis. It sounded like the voice of a helpless man or an elder in resolving a matter that has come to nothing. What do you make, how do you analyze that kind of statement coming from the president when he said, I've tried to call the parties to order, but they've ignored him?
Well, I'll have to take the president's word for what he has said. From ab initio, for those of us who had been watching this internal battle between a father and son inside the same house, throwing all sorts of tantrums and breaking bottles inside, we had always believed that the one person who had the ability and the right to take a stand and bring all of this to an end was the president. And I believe that there were many things that he had within his power that would have brought it to a resolution much earlier. I believe that along the way, the president did some, but did not push as hard as he could have if he was going to resolve this thing today. Now he has been forced to take a decision that is hard and much harder than he would have wanted to take at any point in time. So I still believe that he could have done more earlier, maybe chose not to so that the people can resolve it themselves. It degenerated to what it is, and right now he has no choice but to declare this. It's not good for the people of Rivers State, whichever way you look at it.
Do you think momentarily that the declaration of the state of emergency would douse the situation, the tension, and perhaps all parties, all warring parties, will now have to calm down? Do you think that will douse the tension?
No, Sheon, I don't. So I believe, if I know the way that we are in Rivers State, behind the scenes, you're now going to have some very serious jostling for who will take advantage of this declaration, who is going to work on the state of emergency, who is going to be prepared in 6 months' time, which powerhouse is going to come out. If nothing is done on the political end, you would find out that in 6 months' time, we're still back to where we are, or maybe even worse. And so the president still has a lot of work to do behind the scenes. This is the time when you really have to call people together and let them know that their political future is either totally dead if they do not do this, or people come together to work out a resolution. If in 6 months' time, all political parties do not, or let me change that. If in 6 months' time, all political actors do not come out with a resolution amongst themselves as to how they are going to move Rivers State forward for the benefit of the people of Rivers State, nothing will change.
Now, the president is empowered by Section 305 of the Nigerian Constitution. There are instances where the state of emergency could be declared. In fact, the state governor could ask the president to declare a state of emergency in his own territory. But there are provisions on that section that warrant the president to be able to take such a very strong stand in a state where there are imminent danger, security breaches. But let's get some legal perspective for a moment. I'll come back to you, Mr. Tonyako. Give me a moment. Let's get some legal perspective. I have joining me Liboros Oshoma, who is a lawyer practicing right there in Lagos. It's live for us. Liboros, thank you so much for joining us. Give us an understanding. The provision of Section 305, I did say historically speaking, It's been a while now since the government of Goodluck Jonathan. That was the last time that we saw a declaration of state of emergency in any part of the country. 3 states, we saw the declaration of state of emergency due to security situation. But the president has also alluded that the political tension is leading to security situation in Rivers State, leading him to declare a state of emergency. Legally speaking, was the president right?
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you for the opportunity. And then let's quickly cast our mind back. When the president was in opposition, I agree that once there are challenges, the president has the power by virtue of Section 305. And if you also look at Section 11 of the Constitution, the National Assembly can make, laws for public order and public security for any state. But when the president was in opposition, when the state of emergency was declared, you talked about was declared, let us cast our mind back to the position of the APC there, ACN. Their position was that when a state of emergency is declared, that the president has no power to remove a sitting governor from office, that there is nothing in the Constitution that requires the sitting governor to vacate his office. Yes, a state of emergency can be declared for the federal government to take charge of security situations, and then movement in certain cases are restricted. But there is nothing in the Constitution that says that a sitting governor or the sitting House of Assembly can be sacked. If you look at Section 11, let's start from Section 11. It says the National Assembly may make law for the Federation, any part thereof, with respect to the maintenance and securing of public safety. But specifically, subsection 4 of Section 11 says anytime when the it says anytime when any House of Assembly of a state is unable to perform its function by reason of the situation prevailing in that state, the National Assembly may make such law for the peace, order, and good governance of the state with respect to matters in which a state House of Assembly may make law as may appear to the National Assembly to be necessary or expedient within such time as the House of Assembly is able to resume its function. That's where I want to start us from. If you look at that section, can we say after the Supreme Court judgment that the State House of Assembly has not been able to make laws for the state? The answer is no. The House of Assembly had issued directive, for certain persons to appear before them, had even requested the governor to present budget before him, and the governor also had applied to present budget before the State House of Assembly. That's on one side. Then if you now go to the section relied on by the president, which is Section 309 in this instance, very copiously, it gives the president the powers to declare a state of emergency in a situation where the governor has refused or failed to call on the president to declare such a state of emergency if the Federation is in imminent danger of invasion or involvement in a state of war. There's actual breakdown of public order and public safety in the Federation or any part thereof to such extent as to require extraordinary measure to restore peace and security. There's a clear and present danger of an actual breakdown of public order and public safety in the Federation or any part thereof. There's occurrence of imminent danger or occurrence of any disaster or natural calamity. There's any other public danger which clearly constitutes a threat to the coexistence of the Federation. And if you go to subsection 4, it says the governor may, with the sanction or a resolution by 2/3 majority of the House of Assembly. So that means the House of Assembly, as at that time, must still be sitting or can probably be sitting. But in any case, if you look at subsection 5, the president may issue a proclamation of a state of emergency in any case to which the provision of subsection 4 of this section apply, unless the governor of the state fails to, within reasonable time, to make a request to the president to issue a state of proclamation. So in that case, even when a governor is making a request, the governor will not be making a request so that the president will declare a state of emergency and sack the governor and then sack the State House of Assembly. That was the argument of the APC when they were in opposition.
So now let me quickly
believe.
Yeah, let me jump in quickly, Mr. Osoma. the president didn't use the word sack or removal. He used the word suspended. And if you look at the earlier statement made by the president, he said he made a position of the Supreme Court. And the position of the Supreme Court, according to the president, which he quoted in his statement, he said, quote, "A government cannot be said to exist without one of the three arms that make up the government of a state under the 1999 Constitution as amended. In this case, the head of the executive arm of the government has chosen to collapse the legislature to enable him to govern without a legislature as a despot. As it is, there is no government in Rivers State." And the president also alluded to the position of the court, which also posits that there might be, because of the proposed or the alleged defection of the 27 lawmakers, that the validity of their position as lawmakers is invalid, or their position as lawmakers is invalidated by the alleged defection. So the president is saying that there are legal encumbrances in the positions of the executive and the legislature.
No. The president is not the court. All of those encumbrances that the president raised, valid as they are, had been taken care of by the Supreme Court judgment. The Supreme Court judgment had nullified all of those actions taken by the governor of Rivers State, Similaye Fubara. And so, to that extent, since the Supreme Court had taken those steps and invalidated those actions, if Fubara had said that he does not recognize the Supreme Court judgment, then that's when you will now say, despite the Supreme Court judgment, the governor was still going ahead to create that scenario described by the court. The governor has accepted that. And so all of that had been cured by the Supreme Court judgment, and the State House of Assembly had subsequently sat to issue notices to parties and issue notices to the governor.
Let's say, Mr. Oshoma, let's say on the provisions upon which the president acted tonight. He acted on the position of Section 305, subsection 5, which empowers him. Now, the question is that you are saying that the president does not have the power to suspend the governor and the deputy governor. Is that right?
So there's nothing in this section that says that once a state of emergency is declared, and that was the president's position when he was in opposition.
Procedurally, Mr. Oshoma, just for a moment, procedurally, if there is a declaration by the president and a state of emergency in the state, what would follow procedurally?
First and foremost, when there is a declaration of a state of emergency in a state, that means there is crisis in that state. What should follow? Because we operate a federation, the state laws usually govern that state. It is the State House of Assembly that makes laws. And so, for any federal agency to make incursion into such a state, there must be a state of emergency for the federal government to make incursion into that state. And then, but in this case, and not to suspend elected government official. That's what I'm saying. That so state of emergency is okay to be declared for the federal government to collaborate with the state institution. And in some cases, when state of emergency is declared, some rights are limited. For example, the freedom of movement can no longer be absolute because there is imminent danger or threat to danger. But there is, if the Constitution wanted the governor and the State House of Assembly to be suspended, certainly the Constitution would have spelled it. The Constitution did not provide. Section 305, subsection 5, did not say an administrator shall be appointed for such a state. That is my position.
Let's look at it, Mr. Oshoma. It is not explicit in the Section 305 of the what happens when the president declares a state of emergency. In some other situation that we have seen historically in Nigeria and legally speaking, under the provisions of the Constitution, is such a case where state government approach the federal government to say, come and declare a state of emergency. In that case, it is natural what could happen. Look at the literal and the English meaning of state of emergency. And I'm going to read it. It means that where there is a danger or disaster in which government suspends normal constitutional procedures in order to regain control. So there will be the question, in a case where there is a political crisis involving the governor, leading to crisis that is tending to security threat in the state, what would you do? Would you leave one party and ignore the other party? Because in this case, you are alluding to the fact that the president should have left the status quo, leave the governor, leave the deputy governor. What will happen with the weakest side of the divide?
What is required is to leave the democratically elected government and deal with the security challenges in the state. It is not the security challenges. You can say they are fallout of the crisis between the executive and the legislature in the state. But there are security threats, imminent security threats, and there might be impediments. There might be state laws that are impeding the application of federal authority in that state. When a state of emergency is declared, it is those application of state laws that are usually suspended, and not the democratically elected government officials like the State House of Assembly and the state governor. And that is why I have said that if you look at section 4, subsection 4 of section 305, in some cases, it is the governor that can even invite, the president to declare a state of emergency, where the powers, where the challenges, the danger is beyond the powers of the state. Does a governor invite the president to come and sack him from office? The answer is no. Secondly, if you look at subsection 5, where the president declare and the governor has failed to reach out to the president to declare, it is not stated there that a sole administrator shall be appointed in a democratic setting. That's basically what I'm saying. You deal with the security challenges, the security issues, confronting that area, and then restore normalcy to the area instead of sacking an entire democratically elected.
So let's look at it, Mr. Oshoma. Legally speaking, what does this mean in terms of the running of affairs? And mind you, section 305, subsection 6C says that the president said it's for initial 6 months. But the subsection 6C provides that the presidency has a power to extend by another 6 months if the situation remains. But
before then, the state of emergency is not absolute. So if you look at subsection 6, paragraph B, if it affects the federation or any part thereof, and within 2 days, when the National Assembly is in session, or within 10 days when the National Assembly is not in session, after its publication, there is no resolution supported by 2/3 of the members of the National Assembly, National Assembly approving the proclamation. So if within 10 days, when the National Assembly is not in session, or within 2 days, when they are in session, the National Assembly fails to, support this resolution by 2/3 majority, automatically the state of emergency is vacated. It is when the National Assembly adopts and supports it, that's when it can last for 6 months and then subject to another extension.
So now,
I am saying, you remember the debate when Goodluck Jonathan declared state of emergency in 3 states. Let's go back to that debate. What was the debate? Because then PDP was in government, APC was in opposition. What was the position of APC? That governors should, and the House of Assembly cannot be sacked. That is not stated in the constitution. So why are they doing it differently this time?
Now, in part, you think that there is a breach. And your position is that there is a breach by what the president said. This has been gazetted, mind you, so it's become law and is imposed on that state. It comes into effect. Now, it then means that Vice Admiral Ibas is going to take charge of the state, is going to be, in some way, going to be the legislature and the executive, because there is no legislative arm of government in the state. If there is any law to be made, it's taken to the federal, to the National Assembly. The FEC also can make some policy for the state. Those are the provisions as stated by the president, which I think also will be captured in the Gazette that the president has mentioned. But going forward from here, what do you think are the options available to Governor Siminalayi Fubara? Because he's now going to be on the receiving end, isn't it?
Yeah, I had said consistently, on a sober moment now, I had said consistently that Yes, I agree that Fubara committed impeachable offenses, and it was left for the State House of Assembly to deal with. And the impeachment, going ahead to impeachment for me was a too sudden a blow. And I also had expected, similarly Fubara, with all due respect to him, to reach out to his estranged godfather, Wike. Only two of them could sit down and resolve all of these issues. But the drums of war that the supporters of both Fubara and Wike were beating, you know, the drums have not even started and the state of emergency is already declared. And democratically elected institutions are suspended. It will not. It is not for the betterment of Rivers State, really. I expected that maturity should have been allowed to play in this game, and both parties would sit down, look themselves eyeball to eyeball, and then shape their grievances for the betterment of the state. But this what do you call it, high-handedness on the part of both sides didn't help matters, and it will not help matters, no matter how they want to look at it.
Liberals Oshoma, thank you so much indeed for your legal analysis on this matter. The reference back to Section 11, which talks about the role of the National Assembly, and of course the substantive section that the president relied on, Section 305, subsection 5, and if anything goes wrong further in the coming months, whatever, because we see how the president has also drawn in the leadership of the National Assembly, which looks so much that the president also got the nod of members of the National Assembly. It does look to me that we are in for a long ride in this state of emergency journey. Thanks so much, Liberals.
I think so.
Thanks so much, Liberals, for your time. Let me bring back Kenya Cole. Mr. Cole, listening to the legal analysis, give us an understanding of how, because I brought you on the program some months ago and I asked you, what do you think were the possible or the very strong possibility of resolving this crisis? And you gave me some names, about 4 of them, that you think can weigh in. But it does look like those measures were not considered. But with the situation on the ground right now, has this not gone beyond the powers of Siminalayi Fubara and Nyesom Wike?
Oh, wow. So first of all, thanks to Liberals. He has opened a whole different kind of worms, and it's a very serious issue that he has put on the table, and it just kind of cements the position that I have that this is going to be a long haul. Essentially, back to how do we resolve this issue? I said earlier on that the administrative issue, they've signed that into law, that's going to continue. But what you're going to be seeing now, behind the scenes politically, are 3 possibilities. The first possibility is that there might be a challenge on the legal aspect of the state of emergency. So some people may go to court and that will just bring things back. The second may be a consolidation of hard positions, as I said earlier on, where people are trying to take advantage of this state of emergency. But Sean, the third is always where I have been, that we need to have cool heads that are going to sit around the table and decide that, you know what, big sacrifices have to be made. This state of emergency is not good for us. It's not good for the state. And coming out of it, whether it's 6 months or 1 year, things have to change drastically. So we're back to how do we find a solution? And I will still believe that the only way that we're going to solve Rivers' problem is that all the parties who have been worrying, and not just Sim and Wike, but every other party must come to that table and decide to give up ground. If we don't choose to give ground up, nothing will change. So, big battles ahead.
Yeah. Now, so the political tools or the powers that both parties in this field wield, where the governor has a political power. Nyesom Wike, the former governor, is a sitting minister, FCT minister, so that political power is there also. But now, by the proclamation of the president, Siminalayi Fubara has lost momentarily his political power. There are those who will be thinking on Siminalayi Fubara's camp that You've taken power from one side of the divide, and one other party has its power retained. Is that balance? Is that fair?
And that's a very, very good question. And that's why I said that the political work behind the scenes still has to happen. And people are going to raise this question. And again, it will fall on the president to show balance and show fairness. He has to step back and really be the father of the nation at this point in time. He has taken a position which he says that this is for the good of the people. But then there are political actors on both sides that have not been acting on the good of the people. Now, is the president willing to diffuse that balance? And one of the suggestions that you've made might be to say that, you know what, everybody who is a political actor within the federal level should step down. Everybody who is a political actor within the state level should step down. Let's bring everybody back to status quo and let's start building up from there. Very hard decisions have to be taken by the president on the political side. What he has done on the side of the administrative side, state of emergency, is a very tough decision on that side. But the decision politically has not yet been taken in the way that is going to resolve this crisis. And until that is done, I'm afraid that this war continues.
When the president, Mr. Cole, says that I've spoken to both sides of the divide and I've tried to intervene personally, but they've ignored me, is it not an indictment? Let's assume that on one part, he doesn't have power over the governor. But what about his political appointee? And I was trying to ask you that question. What does this mean? If the president said, Minister Nyesom Wike ignored me, Siminalayi Fubara ignored me.
Well, I don't. So if that's the case, then both parties ought to be punished. But I don't think that the president said that. If I heard him right, I may be wrong. I may have to look at it again. But if I heard him right, I believe he said that the person or the side that was ignoring him was the governor and the governor's team, that he had spoken to them and they ignored him. I believe that that's what I heard. If that is the case, then the question would be that what were the conditions that were put forward that then led him to be ignored? A president is a very powerful force. And if a state governor should choose to ignore a president, then it must mean one of two things. Either the solution that has been brought before the governor is so one-sided and he felt that it is so unfair that there is no point obeying it, or secondly, he might have felt that he did not address the issue at hand at all. Now, whether to ignore it or to go back to address it would be a different issue. But if I was the president...
He said, Mr. Cole, he said, these are his words, quote, I have made personal interventions between the contending parties for a peaceful resolution of the crisis, but my effort has been largely ignored by the parties to the crisis. Those are the words of the president, okay. But we need to close now. In closing, just in about 15 seconds, please. You mentioned 4 personalities that you think can help this situation. These 4 persons, can you mention them again? Do you think they still have the possibility of resolving this political crisis?
Gosh, it's gone away. It's gone far beyond them at this point in time, but they are still relevant. At the time I had mentioned that Edo Peter side, I think that he's still a voice that needs to be listened to. I'd mentioned Patience Goodluck because I think that she was very, very involved in the problem that started at the beginning of all of this and has a voice to play at the table when we're working. I mentioned David Ibiaume at that point, and I feel that he needs to come into the picture. I would also mention 2 other people, Ada George and His Excellency Peter Odili. I feel that they all need to be at the table.
All right. Tonya Cole is a founder and a former chair of Sahara Energy and the governorship candidate in Rivers State for the APC in 2023. Thank you so much for your intervention tonight. Also, thanks to Liberos Oshoma, a lawyer who gave a legal perspective to this matter. Well, that's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimbale. I'll see you tomorrow. God bless Nigeria.
Stay connected to the world with Channels TV Podcast and get all the trending stories. Simply log on to channelstv.com, click on podcast, select the program of your choice, and listen. Our podcast is available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere.